The rain fell in thin silver sheets over the broken sidewalks of South Bronx, blurring the neon signs and turning every streetlight into a glowing halo. A tiny, trembling puppy crouched beneath a rusted fire escape, its fur soaked and matted, its big brown eyes darting with fear. Every passing footstep made it flinch. It had been alone for days, hungry and cold, and the city felt like a giant, uncaring monster. When the low rumble of heavy boots echoed down the alley, the puppy tried to hide, but its small body was too weak to move fast. All it could do was let out a soft, broken whimper. The boots belonged to a man most people in this part of town feared more than the police. His name was Victor Viper Moretti, a gangster known for his sharp suits, cold stare, and ruthless control over half the neighborhood's underground. He walked with two of his men, their coats pulled tight against the rain. They were talking about business, about shipments and debts, but Victor suddenly stopped. His eyes caught the small shape shaking in the shadows. "Hold up," he muttered. One of his men frowned. "Boss, what is it?" Victor stepped closer, his polished shoes splashing through a puddle. The puppy lifted its head and looked straight at him. Something in those eyes, fear mixed with desperate hope, hit him harder than any bullet ever had. The puppy tried to crawl toward him, slipping on the wet concrete, and let out a tiny bark that sounded more like a plea. For a moment, the alley went quiet except for the rain. Victor crouched down, ignoring the dirt and water soaking into his expensive suit. "Hey there, little guy," he said softly, a tone no one had ever heard from him before. The puppy sniffed the air, then pressed its cold nose against Victor's hand, as if begging him not to leave. One of the men laughed nervously. "Boss, it's just a stray." Victor shot him a sharp look. "Yeah, and so was I once." The word surprised even himself. Memories he had buried deep, sleeping in abandoned buildings, begging for food, running from people who wanted to hurt him, flooded back. He gently lifted the puppy, feeling how light it was, how its ribs stuck out beneath its fur. "You're starving," he murmured. Without another word, Victor turned and walked toward his black SUV, the puppy held carefully against his chest. His men exchanged confused glances but followed. Inside the warm vehicle, Victor wrapped the puppy in his coat. The little creature stopped shaking almost immediately, comforted by the heat and steady heartbeat beneath it. Back at Victor's penthouse, the puppy was bathed, fed, and laid on a soft towel near the fireplace. It ate like it hadn't seen food in a week, then curled up and fell asleep with a tiny sigh. Victor sat nearby, watching it. For the first time in years, the constant tension in his shoulders eased. But peace never lasted long in Victor's world. The next morning, a call came in from one of his men. A rival gang had been spotted nearby, asking questions about Victor. Trouble was coming. Victor stood by the window, staring out at the city, his jaw tight. He glanced down at the puppy, now awake and wobbling toward him with clumsy steps. "Looks like you picked the wrong guy to beg for help, huh?" Victor said quietly, kneeling down. The puppy wagged its tail, completely unaware of the danger surrounding them. As if sensing his mood, the puppy suddenly yelped and pawed at Victor's leg, tugging gently at his pant. Victor frowned. "What is it?" The puppy pulled again, then turned toward the door, barking softly. Victor followed it with his eyes. Just then, a sharp noise echoed from the hallway outside his apartment, a faint click, almost lost under the hum of the building. Victor's instincts flared. He rushed to the door and flung it open just as a hidden explosive device fell from the frame. He kicked it away, grabbing the puppy and diving back as it detonated with a deafening blast. The shockwave shattered glass and sent smoke billowing through the room, but Victor and the puppy were alive. Heart pounding, Victor stared at the small creature in his arms. If the puppy hadn't warned him, he would have been standing right in that doorway. "So that's it," Victor whispered, holding the puppy close as sirens wailed in the distance. "You didn't just beg me for help, you came to save me." Smoke hung thick in the air, drifting through Victor's shattered penthouse like a ghost that refused to leave. The windows were blown out, glass crunching under his shoes as he carefully stepped through the debris, the puppy still clutched tightly against his chest. Its little heart was racing, beating fast against his own, and for the first time in years Victor felt something dangerously close to fear, not for himself, but for someone else. He wrapped the puppy in his coat again and whispered, "You did good, little hero." Outside, sirens wailed louder as police and emergency vehicles closed in. Victor knew what that meant. They would ask questions he couldn't answer, and his enemies would use the chaos to make another move. He slipped out through a private exit, carrying the puppy down a dark service stairwell that smelled of old paint and oil. Every echoing footstep sounded like it could be his last. When he reached his car, he drove away without looking back, the city lights blurring into streaks as rain began to fall again. They ended up at an old warehouse Victor used as a safe house near the Hudson River. It was quiet there, far from the busy streets, with only the sound of water slapping against the docks. Victor set the puppy down on a dusty couch and checked it carefully for injuries. Miraculously, it was fine, just shaken. The puppy licked his fingers, and Victor let out a short, surprised laugh. "Guess we're even now," he said softly. As the hours passed, Victor's men reported in. The bomb had been planted by a rival crew led by Marco Rivas, a man who had been trying to take over Victor's territory for months. Marco had crossed a line now, but Victor's mind kept drifting back to the puppy, who was now sleeping peacefully, curled up like a tiny loaf of bread. Every time Victor looked at it, he felt something inside him shift. The ruthless gangster who made decisions without mercy was starting to feel conflicted. The next day, Victor took the puppy to a private vet he trusted. The old doctor examined the little creature and smiled. "Malnourished, a bit dehydrated, but otherwise healthy. You're lucky you found him when you did." Victor nodded. "Or maybe he found me." On the way back, they stopped by a park near the river. Victor figured the puppy deserved to feel grass under its paws instead of concrete. He placed it down, and it ran in clumsy circles, barking at birds and chasing fallen leaves. Watching it, Victor felt a strange warmth in his chest. People passed by, some staring in disbelief at the infamous gangster sitting on a bench, smiling at a tiny puppy. That peace didn't last long. A black van pulled up across the street, its windows dark. Victor recognized it immediately. It belonged to Marco's crew. Before he could react, men jumped out, guns in hand. Panic rippled through the park as people screamed and ran. Victor grabbed the puppy and ducked behind the bench, bullets cracking against metal and trees. "Stay down," Victor whispered to the puppy, shielding it with his body. He fired back with precise shots, forcing Marco's men to retreat. But one of them managed to grab a woman who had fallen while trying to escape. He held a gun to her head, shouting, "Drop your weapon, Moretti." Victor froze. He could feel the puppy trembling under his coat. He knew Marco's crew, they would kill her without hesitation. Slowly, Victor lowered his gun. "Let her go. You want me, not her." The man hesitated, glancing at his partner. In that moment, the puppy wriggled free from Victor's arms and ran out into the open, barking loudly. It ran straight toward the man holding the woman, its tiny body fearless and determined. The man was so shocked that his grip loosened. The woman broke free and ran. Victor didn't waste a second. He tackled the man to the ground, disarming him before the others could react. Sirens approached in the distance, and Marco's crew scattered, leaving their fallen partner behind. Victor picked up the puppy, his hands shaking. "You're crazy," he said, half laughing, half in awe. "But you just saved another life." As the police arrived, Victor slipped away again, disappearing into the maze of streets with the puppy tucked safely against him. He knew Marco wouldn't stop, not now. But as he looked down at the small creature in his arms, Victor also knew something else. This puppy wasn't just changing his fate. It was changing his heart. The city felt different now, as if every shadow was watching Victor and the puppy wherever they went. News of the failed ambush in the park had spread fast through the underworld, and Marco Rivas was furious. Victor could almost imagine his rival pacing in some dark room, plotting revenge. But for the first time in years, Victor didn't feel like running or hiding. The puppy, whom he had started calling Lucky, slept curled up on his chest at night, and its steady breathing gave him a strange sense of peace. It reminded him that there was more to life than power and fear. Victor decided it was time to end Marco's threat once and for all, but not the way he usually did. He had seen enough violence. Lucky had already saved lives twice, and Victor didn't want more blood on his hands. Instead, he reached out to an old contact in the police department, someone who owed him a favor from years ago. It was risky, but he was tired of the endless cycle of revenge. They met in a quiet diner on the edge of the city. Victor sat in a booth, Lucky peeking out from inside his coat. "Marco Rivas is planning something big," Victor said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Everything you need is on there. Names, locations, deals." "Shut him down." The detective studied Victor's face, then the small puppy. You've changed, he said quietly. Maybe, Victor replied, or maybe I just finally remembered who I was before all this. Within hours, police raids began hitting Marcos' warehouses, clubs, and hideouts. Sirens screamed across the city, and Marcos' empire started to crumble. Victor watched the news from his safe house, Lucky perched beside him on the couch. Every arrest felt like a weight lifting off his chest. For once, he wasn't winning through violence but through something that felt right. But Marco wasn't finished. That night, as rain pounded the roof of the warehouse, a single car pulled up outside. Victor's men were gone. He had sent them away to avoid dragging anyone else into this. He stepped out into the rain, Lucky tucked under his arm. Marco stood by the car, soaked, his eyes burning with rage. You think you can destroy me and just walk away? Marco snarled. You betrayed your own world. Victor set Lucky down gently behind him. That world was killing me. And it almost killed this little guy too. Marco raised his gun. Step aside. Before Victor could move, Lucky ran forward, barking furiously, standing between the two men. Marco hesitated, confused by the tiny creature daring to face him. Victor saw his chance. Look at him, Victor said. He's not afraid of you, and neither am I anymore. Police sirens suddenly wailed in the distance. Marco realized too late what was happening. He tried to run, but patrol cars blocked the road. Officers jumped out, guns drawn, shouting for him to drop his weapon. Marco looked back at Victor one last time, hatred and disbelief in his eyes, then dropped the gun. He was arrested, his empire officially finished. When it was over, Victor knelt and picked up Lucky, holding him close. It's done, he whispered. Days turned into weeks, and the city slowly forgot about the gangster wars. Victor closed his illegal operations and used his money to open a shelter for stray animals and kids who had nowhere else to go. People were shocked, but Victor didn't care. Every morning, he walked Lucky through the same park where chaos had once erupted, and now all there was were birds, laughter, and sunshine. One afternoon, a little boy at the shelter asked, "Mister, why do you always smile at your dog like that?" Victor looked down at Lucky, who wagged his tail and licked his hand. Because he reminded me how to be human again. The puppy that once begged a feared gangster for help had done something no one else ever could. It had turned a man of darkness into someone who chose light, and in doing so, it changed not just one life, but many. And Lucky, true to his name, had found the greatest gift of all, a family. Pa.